It's about to get even hotter across parts of the state of Florida. What's going on, guys? Meteorologist Jonathan Kegg is in this video. We're going to talk about increasing heat for the weekend. If this hasn't been hot enough for you, it's going to get a couple degrees hotter. We're going to break that down for you. Storm chances going to stay on the lower side as well going forward. There will be storms out there into the weekend to help cool us down, but only for a select few. I'll show you future radar coming up. And then towards the end of the video, we're going to break down the tropics. Tropical update for you. Again, not much going on out there, but there are some waves emerging. We'll take a look at if we can get some of those to develop, and hopefully not, as there's still some dry air out there. First, though, if you want to stay updated on all things Florida weather, especially as we venture through hurricane season, you have to hit subscribe. Please do that. If you happen to find this content helpful, hit that thumbs up button. It really does help us out a lot. Starting off with your Friday evening, August 11th, if you're heading out and about, out around town, it's going to be steamy. There will be a few thunderstorms out there. That's really all I have for you. Keep the lawn watered. Again, the water bill's sky high, the electric bill sky high. It's just terrible. Again, this is above where we should be for this time of the year in terms of the temperature department, at least this extended heat. We're used to the heat, but it's getting a little crazy out there. 8 o'clock tonight, a few lingering thunderstorms, but only again for a few people. Now, getting into Saturday, there will be a few passing clouds out there, but otherwise sunshine going to be out. Once we get into your afternoon, we're going to increase storm chances to about 40% still, though, especially the further north you are. That's going to be the opportunity to see some storms, or especially the further south you are, I should say. Once you get further north again, we're going to see those storm chances really start to diminish again. There are a few thunderstorms by 4 o'clock, and these are also going to favor areas west of Orlando. The East Coast sea breeze tries to kick in, gets it towards I-75, and then really a lot of them fizzle out. So where we really need the rain in western Marion County, especially to the Gulf Coast of Florida, I think for the most part, we're going to miss out getting into the weekend. Now, look at this temperature forecast for Saturday. In Orlando, anyway, we've had 4 consecutive days now of heat greater than 98 degrees, or 98 degrees or higher when you're talking about what the thermometer says. With the heat index, it's been in that 110 to 115 range. Here we go again, getting back up to 98 to 99 degrees. Now, once we get into Sunday, from an actual air temperature perspective, that is going to be our best shot for areas across central Florida to hit 100 degrees without the humidity factored in. Just look at this when you factor the humidity in. Again, this is what makes it so dangerous outside. Look at the heat index for us in Marion County and Flagler County. 115 or greater. Same deal in Sumter County. Bushnell, we're touching 115. That's what it feels like again. It's even hotter on Sunday, and I'll show you why in just one second. But look at this. Anywhere from 115 to 117, that's what it feels like in Ocala, through the Villages, Bushnell, through the I-75 corridor, elsewhere through Central Florida, into that 110 to 115 or so ballpark. Again, it is going to be hot. It's going to be kind of an ugly weekend to be outside, but this has really been the norm over the past week with this intense heat, kind of a hotter than normal heat for Central Florida. Of course, again, I always say this when I do these videos. It's August, it's summer, it's Florida, it's hot, but we're kind of above where we want to be, of course, or what we're used to. Big chunk of high pressure. We've shown you this. This is the reason for the heat, this big dome of high pressure that's been chilling over the Gulf states. It's been providing us with that sinking air. When air sinks, it heats up, it dries out. It's one of the reasons why our atmosphere is so dry in the mid-levels, really putting the kibosh on any storms that try to get going. And it's also been the direct result of this heat and humidity. I want to show you what happens getting into the weekend. Notice that big area of high pressure kind of move from Texas and Louisiana closer towards Mississippi, Alabama, into Georgia, and then the Gulf Coast of Florida. So we're getting the core of that heat that's been just to our west to kind of surge back over into Florida, and that is why we saw, especially towards the I-75 corridor on Saturday and Sunday, that heat index surging to 115, 16, 17 degrees. Again, that's when the humidity and the actual air temperature factored in. So you might be asking, when do we get a break? Here's the deal. Once we get into next week, we're going to start to see this area of high pressure loosen its grip a little bit. You see by Thursday into next Friday, kind of 2 areas of high pressure split. We have another one hanging out here towards Bermuda. But notice that reddish color goes to orange. So the big area of high pressure that's been responsible for generating all of this heat. And again, it's been the excessive heat towards that 105 to 110 to 115. That's the kind of heat I'm talking about. It's still going to be hot next Thursday and Friday. Don't get me wrong. But that area of high pressure finally loosens its grip on the southeast, including Florida, and allows us to kind of get back to the more typical summertime heat by the time we get into Thursday into Friday. Now, there are indications, though, that once we get into next weekend, this guy over the desert Southwest starts to come back and heat us back into this 110-ish realm, that heat index. But it does look like next Thursday and Friday, we may see a short break of the crazy heat that has been going on throughout a lot of Central Florida and throughout the entire state of Florida, really, onto the tropics. This is what we love out of the deal. There's not much going on. We do have a few tropical waves. This is the intertropical convergence zone right here. We get the trade winds coming in out of the northern and southern hemisphere. It helps to force up thunderstorms in this area. There's not a lot of juice with them, though, so that is a good thing. Of course, we have a few embedded tropical waves in here. We have more waves rolling off of Africa, but right now, the Atlantic has not shown me that it is ready to support any of these storms that are rolling off of Africa. So again, that is good news in the short term. Now, I always bring it back. I'm going to caution here. Once we get to the 15th, 20th, that is when, climatologically anyway, we really see things start to ramp up. And the National Hurricane Center does believe that we are going to turn this into an active hurricane season. I'll show you that in just one second. But in the short term, we have a lot of dry, dusty air. It got a late start coming off of Africa, which is one of the reasons why, again, we had those early season flurry of storms with Brett, Cindy, and Don. It started to come back into fruition here as we moved over the last few weeks, and it helped to suppress development in the Atlantic. It's one of the reasons anyway, but there's a lot of that dry, dusty air coming out of the Sahara Desert and still hanging out in the main development region in between the Caribbean islands and the African continent. Until that kind of moves away and until we can see widespread rising motion kind of take over, we're really not going to see that flip switched. And obviously we're hoping that remains the case going forward. But again, even though there's not a lot of activity out there, now is a really good time just to make sure you have all your preparations in order, everything like that. Again, there's nothing imminent. Please don't get me wrong here. We are looking good, knock on wood, but just always a good reminder here, especially as we get ready to turn the calendar page into September. We all know it, August into September. That is the peak of hurricane season. In case you missed it, NOAA came out with their updated forecast. They do this every August. They issue their preseason forecast. They issue their forecast in the middle of the season to kind of update things, how climate factors come in, like El Nino, La Nina, things like that. Of course, we are in an El Nino. We were talking about this in an earlier video. I'll link to that in the description in case you missed the full breakdown and some of my thoughts there on what I thought about the forecast. But they upped their forecast to 14 to 21 named storms, with 6 to 11 of those becoming hurricanes, and then the major hurricanes up from 2 to 5. Even though El Nino brings about those limiting factors that we love, they are banking on, for their increased forecast anyway, that the hotter than normal Atlantic is going to kind of counteract those limiting factors. And again, it is record warm. We've talked about that at length this year, that is the fuel for storms. Now you need to get storms to be there, take advantage of that fuel. The warm ocean temperatures don't spawn these storms by any means. It's just the fuel. But nonetheless, they are expecting things to go crazy here over the next 6 weeks, end of August, and then through September, of the climatological peak of hurricane season. We'll see if that happens. Again, right now, the Atlantic is looking very nice. All things considered, there's some dry, dusty air. We love that in terms of the hurricane potential being limited. But again, I caution that NOAA thinks that this is going to start to get a little crazy here over the next few weeks. We will see what happens. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Again, there is some relief coming in the form. I use that word relief lightly. The heat's been crazy. And again, I'm calling the crazy heat when it feels like 110 plus. We're used to, Floridians, we're used to that heat index being in the 100 to 105 range in the summer, with air temperatures in the mid to upper 90s. We've been hanging out in the upper 90s. We've been hanging out with a heat index of 110 or greater for the last 4 or 5 days. So this is a little bit abnormal. This is atypical. This heat wave, if you will, has been a little longer than what we are used to. Again, we're used to the heat. This is that upper echelon, though. Hottest stretch. We ran some numbers. It's the hottest stretch since 1998. We used the threshold of 98 degrees actual air temperature or hotter for the Orlando observing site. Anyway, I said we were going to close out the video, and I just started throwing out more numbers. So thank you guys for tuning in. I hope you found this video informative and helpful. If you did, please hit that thumbs up button. And if you want to stay updated on all things Florida weather, especially, again, as we venture to the peak of hurricane season, which NOAA believes is going to really crank up over the next few weeks to match up with the climatological peak, hit that subscribe button, and we will catch you next time.